And here starts the action. In Mark 1:22, we saw that Jesus enters the synagogues of Capharnaum and he goes there every Sabbath to preach, and people were astonished at his teachings because he was teaching not as a general rabbi, not as a general scribe, but he taught with authority. Now in Mark 1:23, for the very first time, we see action. Jesus meets with his opponent, the dark side. Let's read. Caiuthus en te synagogeuton anthropos, en pneumati agartazo, kai annekraxen. Let's analyze the grammatical structure of the sentence. The beginning is the usual beginning of Mark, kai euthus, that we know means and immediately and straight away. It's a way for Mark to move from one episode to another. Ein is the main verb of the sentence. And the subject, we find it here, anthropos. This is the subject. Okay. So anthropos, subject, ein, verb, and te synagoge indicates the place. And auton, we know it is the genitive plural, that it's used as a possessive pronoun of them, there. And then there is another en pneumati akartazo. You see, en te synagoge, en pneumati akartazo. Again, this indicates another place. And then there's a comma because really this is the first sentence, and then here another sentence starts. There's a kai, which we know is a conjunction, means and this is the second verb. Okay, so verb one is this ein, and verb two is this anekraxen. Let's start from the subject, anthropos. We saw this word already in Mark. Anthropos is a very common word in Greek, and its root is also present in a lot of English words. Anthropology is the science that studies human beings. Anthropos means man, all right, human being. So the subject of this sentence is man, masculine singular, ending in os. Okay, and the verb is this en. We saw this also. It's an imperfect tense of the verb to be. Okay, the verb to be, and in the third person singular because it agrees with the masculine singular subject. So a man was. So we can say, and so there was a man where? En te synagoge auton. All right. We've seen many times that en is a preposition that indicates a status, a position in a place. And en is usually followed by the dative case. And this is again the case. You see in the definite article, te, eta with iota subscript, and the noun synagoge, which has the ending same, eta, iota subscript, which is the dative case. It's feminine singular. And we already seen this term, synagoge means synagogue, all right, coming from the verb ago, which means to lead, and the preposition sun, which means together, to lead together. Synagogue is where people are led together to pray, all right? It's a place where people are led together to pray. So, en te synagoge means in the synagogue, literally. Auton, we've seen it so many times, is it's a personal pronoun. In the genitive case, it means of them, literally. Okay, so in the synagogue of them, so in their synagogue. Who is Mark talking about? Of course, all the people in Capharnaum. So it's talking about the people that live in Capharnaum. They usually would go to that synagogue. And so in their synagogue, there was a man in pneumati akatharto. So you have the preposition "and," which we already saw once the dative case after it. Then you have the noun, pneumati, and the adjective associated to it, akatharto. In fact, the adjective akatharto ends with this omega iota subscript, which is an indication of a dative, in particular in this case, neuter, singular. Why? Because it's connected to the noun, which is a neuter singular in the dative case, which is pneumati. Now, pneumati comes from the word pneuma, okay? And pneuma means spirit, okay? We've seen this word already marked a few times and indicates the Holy Spirit. So pneuma is the spirit, but it's also connected with the idea of soul. It's what we have inside, spirit, soul. It's usually in connection with the sarx. We saw this already, the flesh, okay? You have the spirit, the pneuma, and then you have the sarx, the flesh. And there's kind of duality there between spirit and flesh. Now, spirit pneuma is what in Hebrew it's usually called ruach. We already seen that, the spirit of God, ruach Elohim. And ruach in Hebrew literally is something related to the wind, to the breath. Okay, it's a breath of life. So the spirit, so the soul. That's why in English you have words like pneumonia, for example. That's a disease of your lungs because that's where you get your breathing, right? So pneuma has the idea of breathing, spirit, soul. Now, this noun is connected with the adjective akatharto. Now, akatharto has this privative alpha in front, which means without. It's an indication that it's without catharto. Now, we've seen this already, Mark, okay? When John and James, Peter and Andrew, Mark says they were preparing or mending their nets. The verb used there has the root of the verb of the term catharto. In English also, catharsis means some purification. You become perfect through a cathartic experience. So akathartos means without purity, so unclean. All right. So en pneumati akatharto literally means in a spirit unclean. Remember John the Baptist? He was announcing the coming of Jesus Christ and he was saying, I baptize you with water, but he will baptize you in Holy Spirit. Remember, en pneumati hagio. This is exactly the same expression. Now in Mark 1:23, we have en pneumati akatharto. So there's the total opposition between hagio, holy, and akatharto, unclean. So you have the Holy Spirit on one side and the unclean spirit on the other side. From on one side you had the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit, and on the other side you had the unclean spirit of the devil. So this whole sentence, until the comma, could be translated as follows. And immediately there was a man in their synagogue possessed by an unclean spirit. Why did I use the word possessed? Because Luke really literally says that this man was in an unclean spirit. He was completely inside an unclean spirit. An unclean spirit was completely over him and mastering him. He was in total control of that poor man. This reminds, on the other hand, of a same expression that Luke uses at the beginning of chapter 4 of his gospel when he says that Jesus, when he was led to the wilderness to be tempted by the devil, he went there en pneumati hagio. So he went there literally filled by the Holy Spirit. He was inside the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit was all over, around him, and in him. But of course, that side, we have Jesus completely filled with the Holy Spirit. Now we have a man that is totally possessed by the devil. And what happened? Well, Kai, conjunction, and then there's another verb, remember, verb number two. Well, the subject is still anthropos, is the man. So a man was there, and what did he do? Well, he anekraxen. So this verb is conjugated in the aorist tense. We're talking about third person singular here in the aorist tense. Now, where is this anekraxen coming from? Well, the verb is anakrazo. Okay, anakrazo. Now, as you probably already figured out, you have this ana, which is a preposition. Okay, and as usually happens in Greek, verbs are a combination of a preposition and a base verb. All right, so you have the base verb krazo, and then you have ana krazo, which intensifies the meaning. So the verb krazo by itself means really to cry. Okay, to cry. Ana indicates a movement upward. Okay, upward. So we could really translate this as to cry out. Okay, anakrazo means to scream in a loud voice. All right, and so and suddenly there was a man in their synagogue filled with an unclean spirit, and he cried out. And what did he cry out? Well, we'll see that in the next episode.